The Mahabharata of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy CIE. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Section 200, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, having, O great king, heard from the illustrious Markandeya the history of the attainment of heaven by the royal sage Indradyumna, Yudhishthira, that bull of the Bharata race, once more asked that sinless Muni endued with great ascetic merit and long life, saying, Thou knowest, O virtuous one, the entire host of the gods, the Danavas, and the Rakshasas. Thou art acquainted also with various royal genealogies and many eternal lines of rishis. O best of Brahmanas, there is nothing in this world that thou dost not know. Thou knowest also, O Muni, many delightful stories about men, snakes and Rakshasas, about gods, Gandharvas, and Yakshas, and about Kinnaras and Apsaras. I desire now to hear from thee, O best of Brahmanas, as to why Kuvalaswa, that unvanquished king of Ikshvaku's race, changed his name, assuming another, viz. Dundumara. O thou best of Bhrigu's line, I desire to know in detail why the name of Kuvalaswa of great intelligence underwent such a change. Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by Yudhishthira, the great Muni Markandeya, O Bharata, then began the history of Dundumara. Markandeya said, O royal Yudhishthira, listen to me, I will tell thee all. The story of Dundumara is a moral one. Listen to it then. Listen now, O king, to the story of how the royal Kuvalaswa of Ikshvaku's race came to be known as Dundumara. O son, O Bharata, there was a celebrated rishi of the name of Uttanka, and, O thou of the Kuru race, Uttanka had his hermitage in a delightful wilderness. And, O great king, the rishi Uttanka underwent ascetic austerities of the severest kind, and the Lord Uttanka underwent those penances for numberless years with the object of obtaining the favours of Vishnu, and gratified with his penances that illustrious Lord presented himself before Uttanka. And beholding the deity, the rishi in all humility began to gratify him with many hymns, and Uttanka said, O thou of great effulgence, all creatures with the gods, Asuras and human beings, all things that are mobile or immobile, even Brahma himself, the Vedas, and all things that are capable of being known, have, O Lord, been created by thee. The firmament is thy head, O God, and the sun and the moon are thy eyes. And, O unfading one, the winds are thy breath and fire thy energy. The directions of the horizon constitute thy arms and the great ocean thy stomach. And, O God, the hills and mountains constitute thy thigh and the sky thy hips, O slayer of Madhu. The earth constitutes thy feet, and the plants the bristles on thy body. And, O Lord, Indra and Soma and Agni and Varuna, indeed all the gods, the Asuras and the great snakes all wait upon thee with humility, adoring thee with various hymns. O Lord of the universe, created things are pervaded by thee. The great rishis of high energy and ever plunged in ascetic meditation, always adore thee. When thou art gratified, the universe is in peace. And when thou art angry, terror pervadeth every soul. Thou art, O Lord, the great dispeller of all terrors, and thou art the one supreme male being. Thou art the cause of happiness of both gods and human beings. And, O Lord, by 3 steps of thine thou didst cover the 3 worlds. And it was by thee that the Asuras in the height of their power were destroyed. It is owing to thy prowess, O God, that the celestials obtained peace and happiness, and, O thou of great effulgence, it was the anger that destroyed 100 great Daitya chiefs. Thou art the creator and destroyer of all creatures in the world. It is by adoring thee that the gods have obtained happiness. It was thus, O Yudhishthira, that the high-souled Uttanka praised the Lord of the senses. And Vishnu therefore said unto Uttanka, I am gratified with thee. Ask thou the boon that thou desirest. And Uttanka said, This indeed hath been a great boon to me, in that I have been able to behold Hari, that eternal being, that divine creator, that Lord of the universe. Thus addressed Vishnu said, I am gratified with this absence of all desires on thy part and with thy devotion, O thou best of men. But, O Brahmanas, O regenerate one, thou shouldst of a certainty accept some boon from me. Thus requested by Hari to accept a boon, Uttanka then, O thou best of Bharatas, with joined hands begged a boon saying, O illustrious one, O thou of eyes like lotus leaves, if thou hast been gratified with me, then let my heart always rest on virtue, truth, and self-content. And, O Lord, let my heart always turn to thee in devotion. And hearing these words of Uttanka, the Holy One said, O regenerate one, all this shall happen to thee through my grace. And there will also appear in thee a yoga power endued with which thou shalt achieve a great thing for the dwellers of heaven, as also for the triple world. Even now a great asura of the name of Dundu is undergoing ascetic penances of fierce austerity with the object of destroying the triple world. Hear now as to who will slay that asura. O son, there will appear a king of invincible energy and great prowess, and he will be born in the race of Ikshvaku, and will be known by the name of Vrihadaswa, who will have a son of the name of Kuvalaswa, endued with great holiness and self-control and celebrity. And that best of kings will be furnished with yoga power springing from me and urged and commended by thee, O regenerate Rishi. That king will be the slayer of the asura Dundu. And having said these words unto that Brahmana, Vishnu disappeared there and then. Thus ends the 200th section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. Section 201, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Markandeya said, O king, after the death of Ikshvaku, a highly virtuous king of the name of Sasada, ascending the throne of Ayodhya ruled this earth. And from Sasada was descended Kakutstha of great energy. And Kakutstha had a son of name Ananas. And Ananas had a son named Prithu, and Prithu had a son named Viswagaswa, and from Viswagaswa sprang Adri, and from Adri sprang Yuvanaswa, and from Yuvanaswa sprang Sharavasta, and it was by this Sharavasta that the city called Sharavasti was built, and from Sharavasta was descended Vrihadaswa, and from Vrihadaswa sprang Kuvalaswa, and Kuvalaswa had 21,000 sons, and all these sons were fierce and powerful and skilled in learning. And Kuvalaswa excelled his father in every quality. And when the time came, his father Vrihadaswa installed him, the brave and highly virtuous Kuvalaswa, on the throne. And having thus made over the royal dignity to his son, that slayer of foes King Vrihadaswa of great intelligence retired into the woods for asceticism. Markandeya continued, O king, when the royal sage Vrihadaswa was about to retire into the woods, that best of Brahmanas, Uttanka, heard of it. And Uttanka, who was possessed of great energy and immeasurable soul, approached that foremost of all wielders of weapons and best of men. And approaching him, the rishis began to persuade him to give up asceticism. And Uttanka said, O king, to protect the people is thy duty. It behoveth thee to do that duty of thine. Let us be free from all anxiety through thy grace. Possessed as thou art of a great soul, protected by thee, the earth will be freed from all dangers. Therefore, it behoveth thee, not to retire into the woods. Great merit attaches to the act of protecting people in this world. Such merit can never be acquired in the woods. Let not thy heart, therefore, turn to this course. The merit, great king, that was acquired in days of old by great royal sages by protecting their subjects was so great that nothing equal to it could be seen. The king should always protect his subjects. It behoveth thee, therefore, to protect thy people. O Lord of the earth, I cannot at present perform my ascetic devotions peacefully. Close to my asylum there is a sea of sands known by the name of Ujjalaka. And it occupies a level country and is without any water. And it extends many yojanas in length and breadth, and in that desert dwells a chief of the Danavas called Dundu by name. And Dundu is the son of Madhu and Ketabha, and is fierce and terrible and possessed of great prowess. And endued with immeasurable energy, that Danava, O king, dwelleth under the ground, and, O king, it behoveth thee to retire into the woods, having first slain that Asura. That Asura is now lying still in the observance of an ascetic penance of great austerity, and, O king, the object he hath in view is sovereignty over the celestials as also of the three worlds. And, O king, having obtained a boon from the grandsire of all creatures, that Asura hath become incapable of being slain by the gods and Daityas and Rakshasas and Gandharvas. Slay thou him, O king, and blessed be thou, and let not thy heart turn to any other course. By slaying him thou wilt without doubt achieve a great thing, and thou wilt also obtain eternal and undying fame. And, O king, when at the end of every year that wicked Asura lying covered with sands, wakes up and begins to breathe, then the whole earth with her mountains, forests and woods begins to tremble. And his breath raiseth up clouds of sands, and shroudeth the very sun, and for 7 days continually the earth trembles all over, and sparks and flames of fire mixed with smoke spread far around. And for all this, O king, I cannot rest in peace in my asylum. Slay thou him, O king, for the good of the world. Indeed, when that Asura is slain, the triple world will be in peace and happiness. That thou art competent, O king, to slay that Asura, I fully believe. Thy energy will be enhanced by Vishnu with the addition of his own. In days of old, O king, Vishnu gave this boon that the king who should slay this fierce and great Asura would be pervaded by the invincible energy of Vishnu himself. Bearing that invincible Vaishnava energy in thyself, slay thou, O great king, that Daitya of fierce prowess. Possessed as Dundu is of mighty energy, no one, O king, that is endued with small energy himself will be capable of consuming him, even if he were to strive for 100 years. Thus ends the 201st section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. Section 202, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Markandeya said, thus addressed by Uttanka, that unvanquished royal sage, with joined hands, O thou foremost of the Kuru race, replied unto Uttanka, saying, this visit of thine, O Brahmana, will not be in vain. This my son, O Holy One, known by the name of Kuvalaswa, is endued with steadiness and activity. In prowess also he is unequalled on earth. Without doubt he will accomplish all this that is agreeable to thee, aided by all his brave sons endued with arms like unto iron maces. Give me leave to retire, O Brahmana, for I have now given up my weapons. Thus addressed by the king, that Muni of immeasurable energy replied unto him, saying, so be it. And the royal sage Vrihadaswa then, having commended his son to obey the behest of the high-souled Uttanka, saying, let it be done by thee, himself retired into an excellent forest. Yudhishthira said, O Holy One, O thou possessed of the wealth of asceticism, who was this Daitya of great energy? Whose son and whose grandson was he? I desire to know all this, O thou possessed of the wealth of asceticism. I never heard of this mighty Daitya before. I desire to know all this truly, O Holy One, and with all particulars in detail, O thou of great wisdom and ascetic wealth. Markandeya said, O monarch, know everything as it happened, O ruler of men, as I narrate the particulars truly, O thou of great wisdom. When the world became one broad expanse of water and creatures mobile and immobile were destroyed, when, O bull of the Bharata race, the entire creation came to its end. He who is the source and creator of the universe, Vis, the eternal and unfading Vishnu, he who is called by Munis crowned with ascetic success as the supreme lord of the universe, that being of great holiness, then lay in yoga sleep on the wide hood of the snake Sesha of immeasurable energy, and the creator of the universe, that highly blessed and holy Hari, knowing no deterioration, lay on the hood of that snake encircling the whole earth, and as the deity lay asleep on that bed, a lotus, endued with great beauty and effulgence equal unto that of the sun, sprang from his navel. And from that lotus possessed of effulgence like unto the sun's, sprang the grandsire Brahma, that lord of the worlds who is the four waves, who hath four forms and four faces, who is invincible in consequence of his own energy, and who is endued with mighty strength and great prowess, and as the Lord Hari of wondrous frame, possessed of great lustre and decked with a crown and the Kaustubha gem and attired in purple silk, lay stretched for many a yojana on that excellent bed furnished by the hood of the snake, itself extending far and wide, blazing, O king, in his beauty and the lustre of his own body like 1,000 suns concentrated in one mass. He was beheld some time after by two Danavas of great prowess named Madhu and Ketabha, and beholding Hari in that posture and the grandsire with eyes like lotus leaves seated on that lotus, both Madhu and Ketabha wondered much, and they began to terrify and alarm Brahma of immeasurable prowess, and the illustrious Brahma, alarmed by their continued exertions, trembled on his seat, and at his trembling the stalk of the lotus on which he was seated began to tremble, and when the lotus stalk trembled, Kesava awoke. And awakened from his slumber, Govinda beheld those Danavas of mighty energy, and beholding them the deity said unto them, Welcome, ye mighty ones! I am gratified with you. Therefore, I will grant you excellent boons. And thereupon both those proud and mighty Danavas, O king, laughingly replied unto Hrishiksa, saying, Ask boons of us, O divine one! O thou that art the supreme deity, we are disposed to grant thee a boon. Indeed, we will grant thee a boon. Therefore, ask thou of us anything that cometh to thy mind. Thus addressed by them the Holy One spoke, Ye brave ones, I will accept a boon from you. There is a boon that I desire. Both of you are possessed of mighty energy. There is no male person like unto any of you. O ye of unbaffled prowess, submit ye to be slain by me. Even that is what I desire to accomplish for the good of the world. Hearing these words of the deity, both Madhu and Ketabha said, We have never before spoken an untruth, no, not even in jest. What shall we say of other occasion? O thou foremost of male beings, know that we have ever been firm in truth and morality. In strength, in form, in beauty, in virtue, in asceticism, in charity, in behavior, in goodness, in self-control, there is no one equal unto either of us. A great danger, O Kesava, hath approached us. Accomplish thou, therefore, what thou hast said. No one can prevail over time. But, O Lord, there is one thing that we desire to be done by thee. O thou best and foremost of all deities, thou must slay us at a spot that is absolutely uncovered. And, O thou of excellent eyes, we also desire to become thy sons. This is the boon that we desire. Know then, O chief of the gods. Let not that, O deity, be false which thou hadst at first promised to us. The Holy One then replied unto them saying, Yes, I will do as ye desire. Everything will be as ye wish. Markandeya continued, Then Govinda began to reflect, but uncovered space found he none, and when he could not discover any spot that was uncovered on earth or in the sky, that foremost deity then beheld his thighs to be absolutely uncovered. And there, O king, the illustrious deity cut off the heads of Madhu and Ketabha with his keen-edged discus. Thus ends the 202nd section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. Section 203, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Markandeya said, "The illustrious Dundu, O king, was the son of Madhu and Ketabha, and possessed of great energy and prowess. He underwent ascetic penances of great austerity, and he stood erect on one leg and reduced his body to a mass of only veins and arteries, and Brahma, gratified with him, gave him a boon. And the boon he had asked of the Lord Prajapati was in these words, 'Let no one among the gods, the Danavas, the Rakshas, the snakes, the Gandharvas and the Rakshasas be capable of slaying me. Even this is the boon that I ask of thee.' And the grandsire replied unto him saying, 'Let it be as thou wishest. Go thy way.' And thus addressed by the grandsire, the Danava placed the feet of the deity on his head, and having thus touched with reverence the deity's feet, he went away, and possessed of mighty energy and prowess, Dundu, having obtained the boon, hastily approached Vishnu, remembering the death of his father at the hands of that deity, and the wrathful Dundu, having vanquished the gods with the Gandharvas, began to distress all the celestials with Vishnu at their head. And at last, O bull of the Bharata race, that wicked soul Dasura, arriving at a sea of sands known by the name of Ujalaka, began to distress to the utmost of his might the asylum of Utanka. And endued with fierce energy, Dundu, the son of Madhu and Ketabha, lay in his subterranean cave underneath the sands in the observance of fierce ascetic and severe austerities, with the object of destroying the triple world. And while the Asura lay breathing near the asylum of Utanka, that rishi possessed of the splendor of fire, King Kuvalaswa with his troops, accompanied by the Brahmana Utanka, as also by all his sons, set out for that region, O bull of the Bharata race. And after that grinder of foes, the royal Kuvalaswa, had set out accompanied by his 21,000 sons, all of whom were exceedingly powerful, the illustrious Lord Vishnu filled him with his own energy at the command of Utanka, and impelled by the desire of benefiting the triple world, and while that invincible hero was proceeding on his way, a loud voice was heard in the sky repeating the words, "This fortunate and unslayable one will become the destroyer of Dundu today." And the gods began to shower upon him celestial flowers. And the celestial kettle drums began to sound their music, although none played upon them. And during the march of that wise one, cool breezes began to blow, and the chief of the celestials poured gentle showers, wetting the dust on the roads, and, O Yudhishthira, the cars of the celestials could be seen high over the spot where the mighty Asura Dundu was. The gods and Gandharvas and great rishis, urged by curiosity, came there to behold the encounter between Dundu and Kuvalaswa, and, O thou of the Kuru race, filled by Narayana with his own energy, King Kuvalaswa, aided by his sons, soon surrounded that sea of sands, and the king ordered that wilderness to be excavated. And after the king's sons had excavated that sea of sands for 7 days, they could see the mighty Asura Dundu. And, O bull of the Bharata race, the huge body of that Asura lay within those sands, effulgent in its own energy like the sun himself. And Dundu, O king, was lying covering the western region of the desert, and surrounded on all sides by the sons of Kuvalaswa. The Danava was assaulted with sharp-pointed shafts and maces, and heavy and short clubs and axes, and clubs with iron spikes and darts and bright and keen-edged swords, and thus assaulted, the mighty Danava rose from his recumbent posture in wrath. And enraged, the Asura began to swallow those various weapons that were hurled at him, and he vomited from his mouth fiery flames, like unto those of the fire called Samvata that appeareth at the end of the Yuga. And by those flames of his, the Asura consumed all the sons of the king, and, O tiger among men, like the Lord Kapila of old consuming the sons of King Sagara, the infuriated Asura, overwhelming the triple world with the flames vomited from his mouth, achieved that wonderful feat in a moment. And, O thou best of the Bharatas, when all those sons of King Kuvalaswa were consumed by the fire emitted by the Asura in wrath, the monarch, possessed as he was of mighty energy, then approached the Danava who, like unto a second Kumbhakarna of mighty energy, had come to the encounter after waking from his slumbers. From the body of the king, O monarch, then began to flow a mighty and copious stream of water, and that stream soon extinguished, O king, the fiery flames emitted by the Asura. And, O great king, the royal Kuvalaswa, filled with yoga force, having extinguished those flames by the water that issued from his body, consumed that Daitya of wicked prowess with the celebrated weapon called Brahma for relieving the triple world of its fears. And the royal sage Kuvalaswa, having consumed that great Asura, that foe of the celestials and slayer of all enemies, by means of that weapon became like unto a second chief of the triple world. And the high-souled King Kuvalaswa, having slain the Asura Dundu, became from that time known by the name of Dundumara, and from that time he came to be regarded as invincible in battle, and the gods and the great rishis who had come to witness that encounter were so far gratified with him that they addressed him saying, "Ask thou a boon of us." And thus solicited by the gods, the king bowed to them, and filled with joy, the king said unto them, with joined hands these words, "Let me be always able to give wealth unto superior Brahmanas. Let me be invincible as regards all foes. Let there be friendship between myself and Vishnu. Let me have no ill feeling towards any creature. Let my heart always turn to virtue. And let me, finally, dwell in heaven forever." And the gods and the rishis and Uttanka, hearing this, were exceedingly gratified, and all of them said, "Let it be as thou wishest." And, O king, having also blessed him with many other speeches, the gods and the great rishis then went away to their respective abodes. And, O Yudhishthira, after the slaughter of all his sons, King Kuvalaswa had still 3 sons left, and, O thou of the Bharata race, they were called Dridaswa and Kapilaswa and Chandraswa. It is from them, O king, that the illustrious line of kings belonging to Ichwaku's race, all possessed of immeasurable prowess, hath sprung. It was thus, O best of kings, that great Daitya of the name Dundu, the son of Madhu and Ketabha, was slain by Kuvalaswa, and it was for this also that king came to be called by the name of Dundumam. And indeed, the name he assumed was no empty one, but was literally true. I have now told thee all that thou hadst asked me, viz., all about that person in consequence of whose act the story of Dundu's death hath become famous. He that listeneth to this holy history connected with the glory of Vishnu, becometh virtuous and obtaineth children. By listening to this story on particular lunations, one becometh blessed with long life and great good fortune. And freed from every anxiety, one ceaseth to have any fear of diseases. Thus ends the 203rd section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. Section 204, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, "O thou foremost of the Bharata race, King Yudhishthira then asked the illustrious Markandeya a difficult question about morality, saying, I desire to hear, O Holy One, about the high and excellent virtue of women. I desire to hear from thee, O Brahmana, discourse about the subtle truths of morality. O regenerate Rishi, O best of men, the sun, the moon, the wind, the earth, the fire, the father, the mother, the preceptor, these and other objects ordained by the gods, appear to us as deities embodied. All these that are reverend ones are worthy of our best regard. So also is the woman who adoreth one Lord. The worship that chaste wives offer unto their husbands appeareth to me to be fraught with great difficulty. O adorable one, it behoveth thee to discourse to us of the high and excellent virtue of chaste wives, of wives who, restraining all their senses and keeping their hearts under complete control, regard their husbands as veritable gods. O holy and adorable one, all this appears to me to be exceedingly difficult of accomplishment. O regenerate one, the worship that sons offer to their mothers and fathers and that wives offer to their husbands, both seem to me to be highly difficult. I do not behold anything that is more difficult than the severe virtue of chaste women. O Brahmana, the duties that women of good behavior discharge with care and the conduct that is pursued by good sons towards their fathers and mothers appear to me to be most difficult of performance. Those women that are each devoted to but one Lord, they that always speak the truth, they that undergo a period of gestation for full 10 months, there is nothing, O Brahmana, that is more difficult than that is done by these. O worshipful one, women bring forth their offspring with great hazard to themselves and great pain and rear their children, O bull among Brahmanas, with great affection. Those persons also who being always engaged in acts of cruelty and thereby incurring general hatred, succeed yet in doing their duties accomplish what, in my opinion, is exceedingly difficult. O regenerate one, tell me the truths of the duties of the Kshatriya order. It is difficult, O twice-born one, for those high-souled ones to acquire virtue who by the duties of their order are obliged to do what is cruel. O Holy One, thou art capable of answering all questions, I desire to hear thee discourse on all this. O thou foremost of Bhrigu's race, I desire to listen to all this, waiting respectfully on thee, O thou of excellent voice. Markandeya said, O thou foremost of the Bharata race, I will discourse to thee on all this truly, however difficult of answer thy question may be. Listen to me, therefore, as I speak unto thee. Some regard the mother as superior and some the father. The mother, however, that bringeth forth and reareth up offspring, what is more difficult? Fathers also, by ascetic penances, by worship of the gods, by adorations addressed to them, by bearing cold and heat, by incantations and other means desire to have children, and having by these painful expedients obtained children that are so difficult of acquisition, they then, O hero, are always anxious about the future of their sons. And, O Bharata, both the father and the mother desire to see in their sons, fame and achievements, and prosperity and offspring, and virtue. That son is virtuous who realizes these hopes of his parents. And, O great king, that son with whom the father and the mother are gratified, achieveth eternal fame and eternal virtue both here and thereafter. As regards women again, neither sacrifice nor shraddhas, nor fasts are of any efficacy. By serving their husbands only they can win heaven. O king, O Yudhishthira, remembering this alone, listen thou with attention to the duties of chaste women. Thus ends the 204th section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. Section 205, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Markandeya said, there was, O Bharata, a virtuous ascetic of the name of Kausika and endued with wealth of asceticism and devoted to the study of the Veds. He was a very superior Brahmana, and that best of Brahmanas studied all the Veds with the Angas and the Upanishads. And one day he was reciting the Veds at the foot of a tree, and at that time there sat on the top of that tree a female crane, and that she crane happened at that time to befoul the Brahmana's body, and beholding that crane, the Brahmana became very angry and thought of doing her an injury, and as the Brahmana cast his angry glances upon the crane and thought also of doing her an injury, she fell down on the ground, and beholding the crane thus fallen from the tree and insensible in death, the Brahmana was much moved by pity, and the regenerate one began to lament for the dead crane, saying, Alas, I have done a bad deed, urged by anger and malice. Markandeya continued. Having repeated these words many times, that learned Brahmana entered a village for procuring alms. And, O bull of the Bharata race, in course of his eleemosynary round among the houses of persons of good lineage, the Brahmana entered one such house that we knew from before. And as he entered the house, he said, Give, and he was answered by a female with the word, Stay. And while the housewife was engaged, O king, in cleaning the vessel from which alms are given, her husband, O thou best of the Bharatas, suddenly entered the house, very much afflicted with hunger. The chaste housewife beheld her husband and disregarding the Brahmana, gave her lord water to wash his feet and face and also a seat, and after that the black-eyed lady, placing before her lord savoury food and drink, humbly stood beside him desirous of attending to all his wants. And, O Yudhishthira, that obedient wife used every day to eat the oats of her husband's plate and, always conducting herself in obedience to the wishes of the Lord, that lady ever regarded her husband, and all her heart's affections inclined towards her Lord. Of various and holy behavior and skillful in all domestic duties and attentive to all her relatives, she always did what was agreeable and beneficial to her husband, and she also, with rapt senses attended to the worship of the gods and the wants of guests and servants and her mother-in-law and father-in-law. And while the lady of handsome eyes was still engaged in waiting upon her lord, she beheld that Brahmana waiting for alms, and beholding him, she remembered that she had asked him to wait. And remembering all this, she felt abashed. And then that chaste woman possessed of great fame, took something for alms and went out, O thou foremost of the Bharatas, for giving it unto that Brahmana. And when she came before him, the Brahmana said, O best of women, O blessed one, I am surprised at thy conduct. Having requested me to wait, saying, Stay. Thou didst not dismiss me. Markandeya continued, O Lord of men, beholding that Brahmana filled with wrath and blazing with his energy, that chaste woman began to conciliate him and said, O learned one, it behoveth thee to forgive me. My husband is my supreme God. He came hungry and tired and was being served and waited upon by me. Hearing this, the Brahmana said, With thee Brahmanas are not worthy of superior regard. Exaltest thou thy husband above them? Leading a domestic life, dost thou disregard Brahmanas? Indra himself boweth down unto them, what shall I say of men on earth? Proud woman, dost thou not know it, hast thou never heard it, that the Brahmanas are like fire and may consume the entire earth? At these words of that Brahmana the woman answered, I am no she-crane, O regenerate Rishi. O thou that art endued with the wealth of asceticism, cast off this anger of thine. Engaged as thou art, what canst thou do to me with these angry glances of thine? I do not disregard Brahmanas. Endued with great energy of soul, they are like unto the gods themselves. But, O sinless one, this fault of mine it behoveth thee to forgive. I know the energy and high dignity of Brahmanas that are possessed of wisdom. The waters of the ocean have been made brackish and undrinkable by the wrath of the Brahmanas. I know also the energy of Munis of souls under complete control and endued with blazing ascetic merit. The fire of their wrath to this day hath not been extinguished in the forest of Dandaka. It was for his having disregarded the Brahmanas, that the great Asura, the wicked and evil-minded Vatapi, was digested when he came in contact with Agastya. It hath been heard by us that the powers and merits of high-souled Brahmanas are great. But, O Brahmana, as regenerate ones of high souls are great in wrath, so are they equally great in forgiveness. Therefore, O sinless one, it behoveth thee to forgive me in the matter of this my offence. O Brahmana, my heart inclineth to that merit which springeth from the service of my husband, for I regard my husband as the highest among all the gods. O best of Brahmanas, I practice that virtue which consists in serving my husband whom I regard as the highest deity. Behold, O regenerate one, the merit that attaches to the service of one's husband. I know that thou hast burnt a she-crane with thy wrath. But, O best of regenerate ones, the anger that a person cherishes is the greatest of foes which that person hath. The gods know him for a Brahmana who hath cast off anger and passion. The gods know him for a Brahmana who always speaketh the truth here, who always gratified his preceptor, and who, though injured himself, never returneth the injury. The gods know him for a Brahmana who hath his senses under control, who is virtuous and pure and devoted to the study of the Veds, and who hath mastery over anger and lust. The gods know him for a Brahmana who, cognizant of morals and endued with mental energy, is Catholic in religion and looketh upon all equal unto himself. The gods know him for a Brahmana who studieth himself and teacheth others, who performeth sacrifices himself and officiateth at the sacrifices of others, and who giveth away to the best of his means. The gods know that bull among the regenerate ones for a Brahmana who, endued with liberality of soul, practiced the Brahmacharya vow and is devoted to study, in fact who is vigilantly devoted to the study of the Veds. Whatever conduced to the happiness of the Brahmanas is always recited before these. Ever taking pleasure in truth, the hearts of such men never find joy in untruth. O thou best of regenerate ones, it hath been said that the study of the Veds, tranquility of soul, simplicity of behavior, and repression of the senses, constitute the eternal duties of the Brahmana. Those cognizant with virtue and morals have said that truth and honesty are the highest virtue. Virtue that is eternal is difficult of being understood. But whatever it is based on truth. The ancients have declared that virtue dependeth on Shruti. But, O foremost of regenerate ones, virtue as exposed in Shruti appears to be of various kinds. It is, therefore, too subtle of comprehension. Thou, O Holy One, art cognizant of virtue, pure, and devoted to the study of the Veds. I think, however, O Holy One, that thou dost not know what virtue in reality is. Repairing to the city of Mithila, enquire thou of a virtuous fowler there, if indeed, O regenerate one, thou art not really acquainted with what constitutes the highest virtue. There liveth in Mithila a fowler who is truthful and devoted to the service of his parents and who hath senses under complete control. Even he will discourse to thee on virtue. Blessed be thou, O best of regenerate ones, if thou likest, repair thither. O faultless one, it behoveth thee to forgive me, if what I have said be unpalatable, for they that are desirous of acquiring virtue are incapable of injuring women. At these words of the chaste woman, the Brahmana replied, saying, I am gratified with thee. Blessed be thou, my anger hath subsided, O beautiful one. The reproofs uttered by thee will be of the highest advantage to me. Blessed be thou, I shall now go and accomplish what is so conducive, O handsome one, to my benefit. Markandeya continued, dismissed by her, Kausika, that best of regenerate ones, left her house, and, reproaching himself, returned to his own abode. Thus ends the 205th section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. Section 206, Markandeya Samasya Parva continued. Markandeya said, continually reflecting upon that wonderful discourse of the woman, Kausika began to reproach himself and looked very much like a guilty person, and meditating on the subtle ways of morality and virtue, he said to himself, I should accept with reverence what the lady hath said and should therefore repair to Mithila. Without doubt there dwelleth in that city a fowler of soul under complete control and fully acquainted with the mysteries of virtue and morality. This very day will I repair unto that one endued with wealth of asceticism for inquiring of him about virtue. His faith in her was assured by her knowledge of the death of the she-crane and the excellent words of virtuous import she had uttered. Kausika, thus reflecting with reverence upon all she had said, set out for Mithila, filled with curiosity. And he traversed many forests and villages and towns and at last reached Mithila that was ruled over by Janaka, and he beheld the city to be adorned with the flags of various creeds. And he beheld that beautiful town to be resounding with the noise of sacrifices and festivities and furnished with splendid gateways. It abounded with palatial residences and protected by walls on all sides. It had many splendid buildings to boast of. And that delightful town was also filled with innumerable cars. And its streets and roads were many and well laid, and many of them were lined with shops. And it was full of horses and cars and elephants and warriors. And the citizens were all in health and joy, and they were always engaged in festivities. And having entered that city, that Brahmana beheld there many other things. And there the Brahmana inquired about the virtuous fowler, and was answered by some twice-born persons. And repairing to the place indicated by those regenerate ones, the Brahmana beheld the fowler seated in a butcher's yard, and the ascetic fowler was then selling venison and buffalo meat, and in consequence of the large concourse of buyers gathered round that fowler, Kausika stood at a distance. But the fowler, apprehending that the Brahmana had come to him, suddenly rose from his seat and went to that secluded spot where the Brahmana was staying, and having approached him there, the fowler said, "I salute thee, O Holy One. Welcome art thou, O thou best of Brahmanas. I am the fowler. Blessed be thou. Command me as to what I may do for thee." The word that the chaste woman said unto thee, viz., "Repair thou to Mithila," are known to me. I also know for what purpose thou hast come hither. Hearing these words of the fowler, that Brahmana was filled with surprise. And he began to reflect inwardly, saying, "This indeed is the second marvel that I see." The fowler then said unto the Brahmana, saying, "Thou art now standing in place that is scarcely proper for thee, O sinless one. If it pleaseth thee, let us go to my abode, O Holy One." Markandeya continued, "So be it," said the Brahmana unto him gladly. And thereupon, the fowler proceeded towards his home with the Brahmana walking before him, and entering his abode that looked delightful, the fowler reverenced his guest by offering him a seat. And he also gave him water to wash his feet and face. And accepting these, that best of Brahmanas sat at his ease. And he then addressed the fowler, saying, "It seems to me that this profession doth not befit thee, fowler. I deeply regret that thou shouldst follow such a cruel trade." At these words of the Brahmana, the fowler said, "This profession is that of my family, myself having inherited it from my sires and grandsires. O regenerate one, grieve not for me owing to my adhering to the duties that belong to me by birth. Discharging the duties ordained for me beforehand by the Creator, I carefully serve my superiors and the old, O thou best of Brahmanas. I always speak the truth, never envy others, and give to the best of my power. I live upon what remaineth after serving the gods, guests, and those that depend on me. I never speak ill of anything, small or great. O thou best of Brahmanas, the actions of a former life always follow the doer. In this world there are three principal professions, viz., agriculture, rearing of cattle, and trade. As regards the other world, the three Veds, knowledge, and the science of morals are efficacious. Service of the other three orders hath been ordained to be the duty of the Sudra. Agriculture hath been ordained for the Vaisyas, and fighting for the Kshatriyas, while the practice of the Brahmacharya vow, asceticism, recitation of mantras, and truthfulness have been ordained for the Brahmanas. Over subjects adhering to their proper duties, the king should rule virtuously, while he should set those thereto that have fallen away from the duties of their order. Kings should ever be feared, because they are the lords of their subjects. They restrain those subjects of theirs that fall away from their duties as they restrain the motions of the deer by means of their shafts. O regenerate Rishi, there existeth not in the kingdom of Janaka a single subject that followeth not the duties of his birth. O thou best of the Brahmanas, All the four orders here rigidly adhere to their respective duties. King Janaka punisheth him that is wicked, even if he be his own son, but never doth he inflict pain on him that is virtuous. With good and able spies employed under him, he looketh upon all with impartial eyes. Prosperity, and kingdom, and capacity to punish, belong, O thou best of Brahmanas, to the Kshatriyas. Kings desire high prosperity through practice of the duties that belong to them. The king is the protector of all the four orders. As regards myself, O Brahmana, I always sell pork and buffalo meat without slaying those animals myself. I sell meat of animals, O regenerate Rishi, that have been slain by others. I never eat meat myself, never go to my wife except in her season. I always fast during the day, and eat, O regenerate one, in the night. Even though the behavior of his order is bad, a person may yet be himself of good behavior. So also a person may become virtuous, although he may be slayer of animals by profession. It is in consequence of the sinful acts of kings that virtue decreaseth greatly, and sin beginneth to prosper. And when all this taketh place, the subjects of the kingdom begin to decay. And it is then, O Brahmana, that ill-looking monsters, and dwarfs, and hunchbacked and large-headed wights, and men that are blind or deaf, or those that have paralyzed eyes, or are destitute of the power of procreation, begin to take their birth. It is from the sinfulness of kings that their subjects suffer numerous mischiefs. But this our King Janaka casteth his eyes upon all his subjects virtuously, and he is always kind unto them who, on their part, ever adhere to their respective duties. Regarding myself, I always with good deeds please those that speak well, as also those that speak ill of me. Those kings that live in the observance of their own proper duties, who are always engaged in the practice of acts that are good and honest, who are of souls under complete control and who are endued with readiness and alacrity, may not depend upon anything else for supporting their power. Gift of food to the best of one's power, endurance of heat and cold, firmness in virtue, and a regard and tenderness for all creatures, these attributes can never find place in a person, without an innate desire being present in him of separating himself from the world. One should avoid falsehood in speech, and should do good without solicitation. One should never cast off virtue from lust, from wrath, or from malice. One should never joy immoderately at a good turn or grieve immoderately at a bad one. One should never feel depressed when overtaken by poverty, nor when so overtaken abandon the path of virtue. If at any time one doth what is wrong, he should never do its like again. One should always urge his soul to the doing of that which he regardeth as beneficial. One should never return wrong for wrong, but should act honestly by those that have wronged him. That wretched man who desireth to do what is sinful, slayeth himself. By doing what is sinful, one only imitates them that are wicked and sinful. Disbelieving in virtue they that mock the good and the pure, saying, there is no virtue, undoubtedly meet with destruction. A sinful man swelleth up like a leather bag puffed up with wind. The thoughts of these wretches filled with pride and folly are feeble and unprofitable. It is the heart, the inner soul, that discovereth the fool, like the sun that discovereth forms during the day. The fool cannot always shine in the world by means of self-praise. The learned man, however, even if he be destitute of beauty, displayeth his lustre by refraining from speaking ill of others and well of himself. No example, however, can be met with, in this world, of a person shining brilliantly on account of attributes to be found in him in their reputed measure. If one repenteth of a wrong done by him, that repentance washeth off his sin. The resolution of never doing it again saveth him from future sin, even as, O thou best of Brahmanas, he may save himself from sin by any of those expiations obtained in the scriptures. Even this, O regenerate one, is the Shruti that may be seen in respect of virtue. He that having before been virtuous, committed a sin, or committed it unknowingly may destroy that sin. For virtue, O Brahmana, driveth off the sin that men commit from ignorance. A man, after having committed a sin, should cease to regard himself any longer as a man. No man can conceal his sins. The gods behold what one does, also the being that is within every one. He that with piety and without detraction hideth the faults of the honest and the wise like holes in his own attire, surely seeketh his salvation. If a man seeketh redemption after having committed a sin, without doubt he is purged of all his sins and looketh pure and resplendent like the moon emerged from the clouds. A man that seeketh redemption is washed of all his sins, even as the sun, upon rising, dispelleth all darkness. O best of Brahmanas, it is temptation that constitutes the basis of sin. Men that are ignorant, commit sin, yielding to temptation alone. Sinful men generally cover themselves with a virtuous exterior, like whales whose mouths are covered by long grass. Outwardly they seem to possess self-control and holiness and indulge in preaching virtuous texts which, in their mouth are of little meaning. Indeed, everything may be noticed in them except conduct that is truly virtuous. Markandeya continued, at these words, O best of men, of the fowler, that Brahmana endued with great wisdom, then asked the fowler, saying, How shall I know what is virtuous conduct? Blessed be thou, I desire to hear this, O thou foremost of virtuous men, from thee. Therefore, O thou of exalted soul, tell me all about it truly. Hearing these words, the fowler replied, saying, O best of Brahmanas, sacrifices, gifts, asceticism, the Veds and truth, these 5 holy things are ever present in conduct that is called virtuous. Having subjugated lust and wrath, pride, avarice, and crookedness, they that take pleasure in virtue because it is virtue, are regarded as really virtuous and worthy of the approbation of persons that are virtuous. These persons who are devoted to sacrifices and study of the Veds have no independent behavior. They follow only the practices of the honest and the good. This indeed, is the second attribute of the virtuous. Waiting upon superiors, truth, freedom from anger, and gifts, these 4, O Brahmana, are inseparably connected with behavior that is virtuous. For the reputation that a person acquires by setting his heart on virtuous behavior and adhering to it rigidly is incapable of acquisition, except by practicing the 4 virtues named above. The essence of the Veds is truth, the essence of truth is self-control, and the essence of self-control is abstention from the pleasures of the world. These all are to be noticed in behavior that is virtuous. They that follow those deluded fools that mock the forms of faith prevailing among men, are dragged into destruction for walking in such a sinful path. They, however, that are virtuous and engaged in the observance of vows, who are devoted to the Shrutis and the virtue of abstention from the pleasure of the world, they in fact who tread in virtue's path and follow the true religion, they that are obedient to the mandates of their preceptors, and who reflect upon the sense of the scriptures with patience and carefulness, it is these that are said to be possessed of behavior that is virtuous, it is these, O Brahmana, that are said to properly guide their higher intelligence. Forsaking those that are atheists, those that transgress virtue's limits, those that are of wicked souls, those that live in sinfulness, betake thyself to knowledge reverencing those that are virtuous. Lust and temptation are even like sharks in the river of life, the waters are the 5 senses. Do thou cross over to the other side of this river in the boat of patience and resignation, avoiding the shoals of corporeal existence, repeated births in this world. The supreme virtue consisting in the exercise of the intelligent principle and abstraction, when gradually superadded to virtuous conduct, becomes beautiful like dye on white fabrics. Truthfulness and abstention from doing injury to anyone are virtues highly beneficial to all creatures. Of these, that latter is a cardinal virtue, and is based on truth. Our mental faculties have their proper play when their foundation is laid in truth, and in the exercise of virtue truth is of the highest value. Purity of conduct is the characteristic of all good men. Those that are distinguished for holy living are good and virtuous. All creatures follow the principles of conduct which are innate in their nature. The sinful being who has no control over self, acquire lust, anger and other vices. It is the immemorial rule that virtuous actions are those that are founded on justice, and it is also ordained by holy men that all iniquitous conduct is sin. Those who are not swayed by anger, pride, haughtiness and envy, and those who are quiet and straightforward, are men of virtuous conduct. Those who are diligent in performing the rites enjoined in the three Veds, who are wise, and of pure and virtuous conduct, who exercise self-restraint and are full of attention to their superior, are men of virtuous conduct. The actions and conduct of such men of great power are very difficult of attainment. They are sanctified by the purification of their own actions, and consequently sin in them dies out of itself. This virtue of good conduct is wonderful, ancient, immutable and eternal, and wise men observing this virtue with holiness, attain to heaven. These men who believe in the existence of the deity, who are free from false pride, and versed in holy writ, and who respect regenerate twice-born men, go to heaven. Among holy men, virtue is differentiated in three ways: that great virtue which is inculcated in the Veds, the other which is inculcated in the Dharmashastras, the minor scriptures, and virtuous conduct. And virtuous conduct is indicated by acquisition of knowledge, pilgrimage to sacred places, truthfulness, forbearance, purity and straightforwardness. Virtuous men are always kind to all creatures, and well disposed towards regenerate men. They abstain from doing injury to any creature, and are never rude in speech. Those good men who know well the consequences of the fruition of their good and evil deeds, are commended by virtuous men. Those who are just and good-natured, and endowed with virtue, who wish well of all creatures, who are steadfast in the path of virtue, and have conquered heaven, who are charitable, unselfish and of unblemished character, who succor the afflicted, and are learned and respected by all, who practice austerities, and are kind to all creatures, are commended as such by the virtuous. Those who are charitably disposed attain prosperity in this world, as also the regions of bliss hereafter. The virtuous man, when solicited for assistance by good men, bestow alms on them by straining to the utmost, even to the deprivation of the comforts of his wife and servants. Good men, having an eye to their own welfare, as also virtue and the ways of the world, act in this way and thereby grow in virtue through endless ages. Good persons possessing the virtues of truthfulness, abstention from doing injury to anyone, rectitude, abstention from evil towards anyone, want of haughtiness, modesty, resignation, self-restraint, absence of passion, wisdom, patience, and kindness towards all creatures, and freedom from malice and lust, are the witnesses of the world. These three are said to constitute the perfect way of the virtuous, viz., a man must not do wrong to anybody, he must bestow alms, and must always be truthful. Those high-souled good men of virtuous conduct, and settled convictions, who are kind to all and are full of compassion, depart with contentment from this world to the perfect way of virtue. Freedom from malice, forbearance, peace of mind, contentment, pleasant speech, renunciation of desire and anger, virtuous conduct and actions regulated according to the ordinances of Holy Writ, constitute the perfect way of the virtuous. And those who are constant in virtue follow these rules of virtuous conduct, and having reached the pinnacle of knowledge, and discriminating between the various phases of human conduct, which are either very virtuous or the reverse, they escape from the great danger. Thus, O great Brahmana, having introduced the subject of virtuous conduct, have I described to thee all this, according to my own knowledge and to what I have heard on the subject. Thus ends the 206th section in the Markandeya Samasya Parva of the Varna Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.